Anti-disestablishmentarianism. Yes, that is the word we're going to talk about. A word that has struck fear in the hearts of many, many Americans for decades. Well, at least since 1955, when a 12-year-old girl from Baltimore, Maryland, was asked on a television show, The $64,000 Question, to actually spell this word. And to give her credit, she nailed it. She absolutely hit it out of the ballpark. But since that time, this word has become synonymous with being an esoteric word that's hard to pronounce, hard to understand. Nobody knows what it really means. And it just is one of the longest words in English, period.
Anti-disestablishmentarianism.
Oh non, oh non, oh non, 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 je vais pas voir ça. C'est pas vrai, ça existe vraiment ce truc. What the fuck?
Anti-disestablishment and this.
However, even though it's a long word, even though many people think it's difficult, even though it's difficult for many people to pronounce because there are 12 syllables actually in the word, is it a difficult word? And today what we're going to do is we're going to work on vocabulary building, but by dissecting this word, by breaking it apart, by decoding it and seeing if we can figure out what this word is by all the pieces that it has in it. So by the end of this video, you should maybe look at this extremely long word and maybe it won't be as threatening to you. All right, so let's go ahead and start breaking this word down and let's go ahead and start decoding this word because even though it's a long word, we can break it down into parts and understand its meaning. So as I've mentioned in other videos before, I have said that English is a very verb-heavy language. We really focus on verbs. This goes with sentence structure. This goes with word structure in many situations. And so you want to be looking for verbs and seeing how sentences and maybe how words connect with verbs. And in this word that we have, we actually do have a verb. In the middle of this word, you can see the word establish. To establish, this is a verb. So what does establish mean? According to the Oxford Dictionary, establish means to set up an organization, system, or set of rules on a firm or permanent basis. So we now have identified our verb in this sentence, which is established. Now, in front of establish, we have prefixes. After establish, we have suffixes. So what are the differences between these two? Well, you can always think of prefixes as a way to change the meaning of a word. So, for example, we could say something's popular, but if we want to say it's not popular, we say unpopular. So we change the beginning of it, the prefix, we add a prefix to it so that we indicate that something is not popular. We say it's unpopular. So prefixes really change the meaning of a word. Now, suffixes usually change some sort of grammatical structure of a word. So, for example, we can use the verb to judge. Now, we can say judgment. It means to judge against somebody, but changes it into a noun form. And then this allows us to do a lot of other things. So you can think of suffixes as things added to the end that change the grammatical structure or gives us more clarity as maybe to the part of speech or something else regarding it. And these are the ways that you can really look at both suffixes and prefixes. So we'll go ahead and start with the prefixes and work our way over. So let's look at the first prefix that we have here that's immediately before establish, and that is dis. So disestablish. Now, in this situation, disestablish means no or the opposite. So as we mentioned, establish means to have to create something with a set of rules, laws, beliefs, or whatever. So by putting disestablish, this means to not have or to have the opposite of laws or rules established and created. So this is disestablish, and this can be a verb. So we can say we disestablished this company. Now, usually we would use the word dissolve, okay? But in this situation, we can use disestablish, but it's just not used often. So we now have a new verb, disestablish. Now, let's go to the next prefix that we have, and that is anti, or anti, however you want to pronounce it. Now, anti-disestablish. You have this all together. So, what does anti mean? Well, it also can mean the opposite, but usually it means against. So we can say, for example, anti-clockwise compared to clockwise, but that's British English. In American English, we usually say counterclockwise. So in American English, we usually use it for being against someone or something. So if we take our original meaning of disestablish, which is the idea of no establish, or the opposite of establish, and we add anti to that, anti-disestablish, this now means being against no establish. Now you might be saying to yourself, Dave, that sounds a little bit weird. And it does, because when we use against, we are for or against something, not a verb. Okay, you're not anti-go or anti-drive. Okay, you would be anti-driving. Okay, we change that into a gerund, thus now making it essentially a noun. Okay, but you're anti-something. So we are anti-legislation or something like that. So in this situation, because we have anti at the beginning, we now have to change establish, because we can't use anti with a verb. We now have to change establish to a noun. And this is where the MENT part comes in. Anti-disestablishment. We have now been able to change that to a noun to make anti work with the word that we have. Now, can we just say anti-disestablishment? Yeah, that is absolutely fine. So anti-disestablishment would be the correct word, or a correct word in this case, not the correct word, because that is the entire word that we're trying to do. But in this situation, this would be correct. Now, one thing I do want to make clear before we continue, and that is that if you see something that looks like a prefix at the beginning of a word, it might not necessarily be so. So don't think that if you see something that it's automatically a prefix. So for example, you might see anticipate. Okay, it begins with A-N-T-I, but it doesn't mean anti. It's just part of the word. Okay, so for example, if we have re in front of a word, it might not necessarily be to do something over again. So just be aware that if something looks like a prefix at the beginning of a word, it might not necessarily be so. Now, back to our big word. So we have anti-disestablishment. So this is against no establishment. Now that might sound a little bit better to you. Against no establishment. And if you made it this far, you can go ahead and go to my website, davesenglish.com, where you can sign up for lessons today, and I can help you with your English learning needs. I do one-on-one live lessons. None of these lessons you buy in a can or buy in a book. This is live one-on-one lessons. I'm more than happy to help you out. All right, so let's go ahead and look at our next suffix, which is Aryan. Now, you might have seen this before in connection with people, and that's what we're going to be using it for. So you might have heard this in connection with somebody who has a job, like a librarian, for example. But we can also use Aryan to connect to people that have some sort of value system or beliefs or something like that. So, for example, we can say vegetarian, right? Somebody who has the beliefs of eating vegetables. So vegetarian would be an example of that. So this Aryan would be connected to that. So if we put Aryan on the back of this, now let's look at our word. Now we're talking about people. We're not talking about a thing anymore, but we are talking about people. So anti-disestablishmentarian. Okay, so that would be a person. So that would be a person who is against no establishment. A person who is against no establishment. Now, see how this word is starting to build now? A person who is against no establishment. But we still have one last suffix, and that is ism. All right, so we have that last suffix there, ism. Now, ism usually means, and you might be familiar with like socialism, capitalism, something like that. It's usually a set of beliefs or ideology or philosophy or something like that. So having ism at the end shows that this whole entire thing that we're talking about is about a philosophy, or in this case, more a political belief, a belief in political theory, which is what it originally was. And we'll be talking about that in a second. So let's now put the whole entire word together. So what I mentioned before we added ism, I said people who are against no establishment, right? People who are against no establishment. Now, by adding ism in there, this means that you have this political belief regarding people who are against no establishment. So when we think of authoritarianism, we usually think of an authority figure or an authority, maybe organization, okay, and then those people, and then the philosophy behind that. Authoritarianism is this idea. It isn't the person themselves. So in this word that we have, anti-disestablishmentarianism, we are basically saying that this is a political belief in which people are against no establishment. Now that seems weird. That seems like a totally weird concept. But if you actually look at what the original meaning of this is, it actually kind of makes sense. So in this situation, what it was people who were anti-disestablishmentarians were people who were against people who wanted the Church of England to no longer be the established Church of England. So it was people against the people against type of thing. It's weird, and this is why this word is very convoluted. But in this word, even though it is convoluted, the main idea is we're talking about a political system of people who are against no establishment. That's what it is at the end of the day. And we were able to figure this out by looking at all the components and all the pieces of this word, breaking it apart and taking it step by step to understand what is considered to be one of the more complex words in the English language. Well, that's pretty much it. I just want to take this big, huge word and kind of show you how you can take this apart. And the reason why is because you will encounter many words that have a lot of suffixes and prefixes. And I'm going to be doing more videos that actually explain more about suffixes and prefixes so you can start breaking apart words more. And on top of that, this also helps you create words. Can you create words? Yes, maybe there's something that the vocabulary that we have right now really can't explain it, and you need to use an ism or some other suffix, or maybe you need to use a prefix to make your point known. So this is what these are for, to make these modifications. And I want you to see how even with one of the largest words in the English language, how we can take these modifications and try to at least somewhat simplistically make some sort of sense out of it, even though once we make sense of it, it still sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook. I mean, honestly, it does. But I wanted to do that. Thank you very much. If you like this video, go ahead and like it. Please subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 10,000 here, so I'd love to be able to get 10,000. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are. And in the next few weeks, we'll be doing more on prefixes and suffixes to help you with that vocabulary building experience. Thank you all very much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.